Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this on a glorious Friday morning here in Louisiana. My name is Chris Spencer. I am the new president of the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana. I know we'll have a few probably joining us here as we go along in the next few minutes. But what I want to do is get started this morning. We're really excited to get back on track with our webinar on Planned Giving Navigator. This is a program that we started about 5 years ago, and it is led by a good friend of the foundation, Karl Mattison. And Karl is going to guide us this morning on why our churches need planned giving, even in the pandemic, especially coming out of the pandemic, and how our churches can enhance or establish a planned giving program using the Planned Giving Navigator process. We also are joined this morning by Ellaine Wilson, who is the endowment committee chair at Mulholland United Methodist Church down in Metairie. Ellaine wears several hats at Mulholland as a lay leader. We thought it'd be great to have some feedback from a leader in a church who has helped establish planned giving and raise the awareness of planned giving in one of our churches. And so we're blessed to have Ellaine with us this morning. Real quick background on Karl. Karl is based in Washington, D.C., and he is the director of planned giving at the Presbyterian Foundation in Washington, D.C. He's helped dozens of churches enhance their planned giving programs, even Methodists. So maybe we're the slow learners, Karl. He worked with a lot of Methodist churches. We've been working with Karl for about 5 years now, and he developed this Planned Giving Navigator program as a way to give churches kind of everything they need to put a planned giving committee together and start educating their congregations on the benefits of legacy giving. Karl, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. And I have to say, I'm really excited about what we should call our headliner today, Ellaine. It's one of the most exciting things that I've been involved with. So thanks for letting me be here. And we are going to honor time today. I love the time frame we have. I'm going to do some sprinting here. So I'll try to talk fast but understandable. On the flyer today, there were 2 questions, and I'm going to answer those and then hand it to Ellaine. First question was, does your church need to start or to enhance a planned giving program? Heck yeah. You need to start or enhance a planned giving program. More importantly, this year is the question, what about planned giving during the pandemic? And my immediate response to that is a big, long, Well, that's where we're going to hit pretty hard during my few moments of speaking. So I do want to hit that first question, though, about planned giving. Do you need to start or enhance? Here it is, quick. I'm going to talk about what it means for the individual, what it means for the church, right? I'm going to do a quick share screen so I can show you instead of having to use so many words. Stand by. So first, we're going to talk about a super short refresher. What in the world is planned giving to our individual church members? I'm going to use me, for example. Planned giving is actually the greatest gift that most of us will ever make. It's a big statement. This is the greatest and largest gift, on average, that most of us will ever make. We're going to just outline what it is briefly, and then I'll get moving. For most of us, and especially during the pandemic, we've been very, very keen to what is in our pockets, our checking, our savings, and investment accounts. That's how we pay for our mortgage, our soda. That's how we pay for our insurance, whatever. It's also where we give to our church. And that's only about 5% of what any of us own it on average. This is kind of our portfolio. I hope you all have that second home. I don't. Put it in there just to dream. But 95% of what we have as individuals, we can't use for ministry right now. Well, not directly, at least. We can't convert our second home into what our passions are, or where we want to do wonderful things. But 95% of what all of us own, that we hold in trust, that God has given us, that we're managing during our years on earth, we're all going to be finished with all of that one day. And each one of us has the opportunity and the responsibility to decide what happens with that 95% of what we have. What happens next with it? Often we're thinking of our loved ones and the places that mean the most to us. And for most of us, the next concentric circle of responsibility is probably in our church. That's why this is an amazing opportunity for us. If we're really into what these gifts we've been given to manage are, this is a great opportunity for us to do game-changing gifts. So that's what planned giving is pointing some of this at ministry specifically and hopefully for the next generation, just like it's been done to us, for us. Okay, planned giving versus annual giving. I'm going to quantify it for you. I've given you some percentages. I'm going to stick with percentages because it's hard to say what a dollar amount is of a planned gift. But let's put this into your head, what it is relative to annual giving. This is from an old IRS white paper. And planned gift, and this is in terms of bequest, which is by far the most common kind of planned gift. The average planned gift compared to annual giving is 2.74 times the size of someone's lifetime giving. So let's say I've been at my church for 20 years and have been giving every year for 20 years. Whatever that equals, multiply that times 2.74, that is the size of the planned gift. It is an enormous opportunity for me. When I'm making my annual gifts, I'm taking care of the operations and the current ministries and mission. When I'm doing my planned gift, I am giving ballast and energy and power to the generations who come next after me. That's the big stuff. Okay, I'm going to stop on this because I want to get to Ellaine. But in 2020, bequests were $41 billion. That's how much we as Americans were giving to nonprofits and churches. That number has gone up. We're terrified of this pandemic and what's done to giving, and it has hurt a lot of places with annual giving, but planned giving has not only stayed steadfast, it has expanded as it seems to always do. So I think I've hit on the point about what is planned giving. Why should we have it? It's because of our members, what they need from it. It's a really important thing. The other thing is for the church, this is really a liminal moment in kind of our collective generations. It's demonstrating our history how important planned giving is. It's actually our cautionary tale. Planned giving is really an inheritance to the church that each one of us kind of has the opportunity to give. And in that, we pass on these reserves, which might be endowments, that help power the church through challenging times. And if you look at the most storied institutions, whether that be our churches, Smithsonian, hospitals, educational, you hear about Harvard, the most storied institutions in our community have been around so long because they have two things. They have a mission or ministry that is critical and means something. And the other is that they have been funded through planned gifts so that they have these reserves and endowments that help them get through these storms, through these cautionary tales where we always refer back to, we got through like a period of war or depression or pandemics. We've used those as examples. That is how churches got to keep the engines running through pandemics. And now we're in the middle of one. And if you watch planned giving during the era of pandemic, planned gifts, as we just saw, have been coming in a very big way, whereas annual gifts have been much more difficult and much more, let's say, questionable. Yeah. So planned giving in the era of pandemic, I'm going to give you a thumbnail sketch of what happened last year. Nothing. While the gifts were coming in, planned giving programs practically came to a screeching halt in 2020. They got a little bit of revival at the beginning of this year because people thought we're coming out of this. Planned giving means a lot to us. We need to really be focused on this. People have been thinking about the end of life, about legacies. So let's get back into this. But we have like slipped back. We've kind of gone back into a little bit of dormancy with planned giving over the summer. And I would say over the past month, the interest has resurged. It's even spiked. I've been a little bit overwhelmed, if I can be honest, because churches are like, let's go, we're ready, we need to be there. So I'm excited to see that and to hear that. Planned giving is coming to the forefront because people are thinking it's a great source of ministry to lift up future generations during those storms. That's how we can help. But it's also really important for our membership to be able to say, yes, my faith is strong and it was given to me. Now it's my turn to give it to someone else. And that has really been an important thing. Plus, if we just want to talk about the financial numbers, asset values are really going to show that planned gifts are going up significantly more. I just did the numbers for the markets this morning. Like the NASDAQ is up 41% in the past 12 months. What people have written into their estate plans are skyrocketing. And churches who are receiving those gifts get about 12 to 14% of their revenue from planned gifts. And that's on top of annual giving. That's not to substituting planned giving for the most part. Okay. I'm going to jump through a couple of really interesting points so that we can get to much more interesting points from Ellaine. I'm going to wrap it up with steps, something that as people get re-engaged or engaged for the first time in planned giving programs, what do we do now? I would say simplify planned giving. It's absolutely an exciting time to do it, believe it or not. But we need to simplify it because I'm hearing from many churches that volunteerism is taking a bit of a break. We can't get the volunteer hours to do a program like we used to. But the counterpart to that, the counter argument to that is that a lot of the tools we have been putting together, your foundation has amazing tools on hand, and we've got these tools that they're helping churches engage that make a lot of these materials like brochures, like a planned giving site. We have like some brochure policy samples. Those kinds of things are available to you, so you do not have to do what I would say is most of the work that a marketing department would have to do or an investment committee would have to do. A lot of that infrastructure is there, and we're going to carry a bit of that load from you. So the next thing I would say is learn from what others have done, learn from their mistakes and their successes. That's why Elaine's here. And I'm going to pass it off with the last piece of recommendation is to lower your expectations, at least for right now, because bandwidths are shorter. You might have less ability to knock it out of the park like Ellaine has. And that's okay. I would say Ellaine is actually her program probably should be a master's course, to be honest with you. And many of our churches don't have those kinds of resources or time and can do something that is scaled to your size and your capacity. So I hope you find her inspirational and realize that there is more or less that any church can do. Just manage those expectations. And I just want to hand that over now. Elaine's going to share a little bit of her process, how it went, highs, lows, and things like that. And if I can introduce now and hand over to Ellaine.
Thank you, Karl. I'll tell you how I got involved with this. I was chair of finance for several years, and it was really my first step into any kind of leadership at Mulholland. I'd been at the church for, I don't know, more years than I care to think about, and had kept a very low profile, but somebody invited me to join finance. And when I joined finance, I made the mistake in the first couple of meetings of asking questions. So the next year they made me the chair. And one of the things that I did was I got a checklist of what is the finance committee supposed to do. And the very last thing on the checklist was one of the responsibilities of finance is to establish an endowment committee, or an endowment, not a committee, just an endowment. And I kept looking at that for the 4 years that I was chair of finance and thinking, what in the world is that? So finally, as I got to the end of that term, I decided, well, I better figure this out. And at the same time that happened, I got invited to this seminar that was being presented in Baton Rouge. And Rob Fairley was involved, and Chris, and obviously Karl. And I can tell you, I walked away and I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world is this about? And it has been, I can tell you, just an amazing process. I think that seminar was in 2018. And so came back and had a couple of conversations with our senior pastor, and we kind of just, kicked the ball around, and we started thinking about who in the church might be able to help us. And there was a gentleman who was a member of our congregation who had been in 2 prior efforts to start an endowment for Munholland. And in both situations, they were very committed and they were very excited, and it just went nowhere. And I honestly think that the difference between those efforts and this effort is the fact that we have had the support of the foundation and we have had the leadership from Karl. So all I can tell you is, if you're considering this, you need to know how strong those resources are that are available to you. So I thought I would do today is just kind of go through the steps that I've taken and kind of give you some feedback on that. I think the first thing that you need to do is look at your congregation and tap into the resources in your congregation. You'll probably be surprised at people that kind of you don't expect to have skills that will really work well for you. The first person that we worked with was the gentleman who worked on 2 prior efforts, and he was, one of the strong leaders in our congregation. So it was wonderful to have his support and his input. He also had tremendous finance experience. And then the second one was a young man who is in investing, and that is his career, that is his job. And he hadn't really been involved in the congregation that much in the past, but this was his arena. So he has just blossomed in working with us. The next was a lady who had been involved with endowments in other churches and had recently joined our church. So we just had an abundance of resources within our congregation that just kind of came to the surface. And I don't think any of this has happened for us by coincidence. I will have to tell you that every step along the way, I really do believe that God has had a hand in getting us to the place that we are at. Because things have happened that have just been total surprises, and they've all happened at exactly the right time. And it has just worked. And it's got to be something beyond any of us that has made us get to this point. So above and beyond that, our senior minister has been tremendously involved, very supportive, very engaged. We've pushed and pulled on several points along the way, but he has really been amazing. So I think you have to have the support of your ministerial staff. So some of our startup challenges were, first of all, I had no idea what I was doing. I'll just put that out there. I mean, I was clueless. I didn't know what an endowment was. I mean, I'd heard the word, I'd worked on some boards, but in terms of really the nitty-gritty of any of this, I was clueless. So we started off by, I researched a lot of different things. One of the first things I did was go to the Book of Discipline to see what rights and responsibilities we have. And essentially what has to happen is that the Board of Trustees is responsible for the assets of the church, but they have they can and are encouraged to establish a legacy committee or an endowment committee to manage those resources for them. So the first thing you need to do is get the support of your Board of Trustees. And then secondly, I reached out to it with Karl and Chris and Kelly and the support of the foundation. I reached out to so many other churches in the conference that have had successful efforts in terms of establishing a legacy committee, and looked at all kinds of policies, all kinds of ideas from them. There's a First Methodist in Slidell. If any of you know Rick Jeppesen, he was a huge support to us as we were working through all of this. I mean, he shared policies, he just shared advice, he really mentored us. So finding somebody like that you can work with is a tremendous asset. And then when we started out, we were looking at just establishing an endowment fund. And I can tell you, as we've worked through this and understood some of the responsibilities, that concept has grown. And it is an interesting position to be in, because at this point, we are basically responsible for managing, not controlling, but managing the investment of all non-budgeted funds at the church. So anything that comes into the church that's not budgeted falls under our realm of responsibility in terms of deciding, does any of this money need to be managed? And if so, then we look at, whatever resources we have in terms of figuring out how to invest and grow those funds. So we had initially a lot of conversations with Karl and Chris and Rob. There was the first thing that happened was they came down and did a presentation, kind of like the one that Karl just did, just for our committee. And it was extraordinarily inspirational in terms of why is it important to establish an endowment for your church. And so that was really our beginning. And then from there, the other initial challenges that we had, and we still are facing a lot of those, was timing. When do you start this thing? How do you start this thing? How do you roll it out to the congregation? How do you introduce it to your congregation? I mean, it's a new concept, and it's a new way of thinking about how money in your congregation is going to be managed. So one of the first things that we felt we're dealing with it is that about the same time we were starting this legacy committee, our church was undergoing a huge capital campaign. So we knew that we were not going to be rolling out the legacy campaign when a capital campaign was going on. So just about the time we thought we were ready to start introducing the idea of legacy to the church, COVID hit us. So we have been putting this off and putting this off and putting this off in terms of rolling out the concept to the congregation. But I'll tell you, that has been an amazing advantage to us, because it has given us the opportunity as a committee to really hash through all of the concepts in terms of what is it that we're trying to do. It gave us time to really go through all of our policies and procedures and understand what we were trying to say, what was important, what was not important. And I think COVID has been an advantage to us because it's given us time. So that was one thing. We also recognized that we couldn't roll it out in conflict with any kind of a stewardship campaign. So we were getting ready to roll it out in the summer now, and then we started rolling into Delta. So that kind of put us off. And then when we got rid of, are getting to the point where we're comfortable with Delta, we're right in the middle of our stewardship campaign. So once again, our big rollout probably is not going to happen until January. So the very first thing that I did after we really made the commitment to do this was I printed out the Planned Giving Navigator handbook. This is on the website. It looks like this. And basically, this is the tool that will tell you the steps that you need to get your website started. So my thoughts were, okay, well, I've got to get a website going. And I kind of messed around with the handbook a little bit, tried to figure it out. Well, I think the website probably is the last thing that you want to be concerned about. My advice to everyone would be to work on your policies and procedures first, because I think that in talking about the issues that you're going to address as you're establishing your policies and procedures, you define your concept. You decide what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're trying to do, and how are you going to incorporate those ideas into something that is workable. And I'll tell you that we started working on our gift acceptance policy first, because that was the first one that we had a template for, somebody had suggested a process for. So we literally worked on our gift acceptance policy for over a year. And in doing that, that was the thing that where we answered so many questions about what are we trying to accomplish here. It was amazing. But after we finally kind of got our gift acceptance policy down, we had talked about so many different issues in terms of, are we doing an endowment? Are we doing, what are we doing in debt with designated accounts? What are we doing with, money that's already in endowed accounts in the church? What is our role with all of that? And so then the next thing that we did was we started, I had done a lot of research from policies from all kinds of different places. And I came across one from the Episcopal Church, and I'm trying to watch time, from the Episcopal Church. And they basically had a template for like 5 or 6 different policies. So what we did was we just took their policies and customized them to fit in with the issues that we had been discussing for that prior year. And all of our policies were then finished probably within about 6 months, because we had something that somebody had already done and we didn't have to start from scratch. So my advice to you is to do your policies and procedures first. So then the next thing that we did, and we were kind of doing this at the same time, was working on our brochures. There are templates on the website that we used to develop our brochures, and all we did basically was customized some of the verbiage on the back of the brochures. This is one of the brochures, and then on the back is all of the wording that has been pretty much, most of it was provided to us by by Karl's group. Well, we just had to customize some things for Louisiana law and some things that we tweaked just to be in conformity with some of the issues that we were addressing at Mulholland. So the brochures seemed a little daunting at first, but it's really not as hard a task as you would expect. So I would say do your policies first, then your brochures. And then I can tell you, I'll just kind of tell you what we've done, because I'm trying to be acknowledging of time. First thing we did was to develop our team, which is critical. We gained acceptance from our board of trustees so that we've had their support. We got official approval of our policies and established our committee in November of 2021. We got our first donation of an endowed gift 2 weeks after we established the fund, established the committee and the fund with the church. And you will hear as you're working through this, the importance of planting a seed when you are establishing your legacy work. You don't go out today and talk to somebody and get a check tomorrow. You go out today, you talk to somebody and they think about it, and you get money later. We got a check that was unbelievable. I don't think I'm not going to exactly tell you the number, but it was larger than our capital campaign. And it was from a gentleman who had been a member of our congregation 25 years ago. Nobody had heard from him in 25 years, other than they kind of knew about him. He actually became a Methodist minister, and he and his wife didn't have children. She predeceased him. And when he died, he left his estate to the church, to our church that he hadn't been at in 25 years, because he believed in our scholarship program. So it was, again, one of those situations where we established the committee. 2 weeks later, we get a big, huge check. It was phenomenal. So there was that. We got official recognition from the bishop in November. We made a presentation to our church leaders in February. Basically just a soft rollout of the concept of legacy giving and why it's important in the church and what we were trying to accomplish. Then we made a presentation to our congregation in one of our ministry moments in May of this year. And that really is where we are. We still have a lot of work to do. We have I would say probably the biggest thing, that challenge that we have is facing us right now is really setting up our website, because that is the thing that we still have to do, but we are well on our way. And I can tell you that all of the concerns that I had originally in terms of going out and talking to people about giving money, especially big numbers of money, I'm not the least bit concerned about that anymore, because I recognize that people are looking for an opportunity to have a legacy. People are being approached by all kinds of organizations to leave their money to something that they may have been involved with at some point in their time. But churches are people's homes. Churches are where people's passions are. And churches have not done a good job of asking people to leave their legacy with the church. So I think it is such an opportunity that we have to allow people to continue their legacy in the environment that they have loved for many, many, many years, and know that their legacy will continue for future generations. So.
Well said, Ellaine. And what I love about this is that you guys, you got your policy established, and 2 weeks later you got a check. I mean, that should be how it's going to work for every church, right?
I don't even know how to tell you guys how many of those God things have happened. I mean, it's just there, and there are no consequences. I mean, it's been an amazing journey. That's all I can say.
Well,
but I will tell you that the resources that are available to you, and I should have probably, I was going to talk about this a little bit. The resources that are available to you are amazing. This is what the foundation and the Planned Giving Navigator have done for us. Planned Giving Navigator, the handbook is just a tool to tell you about what you need to set up your website. But the Planned Giving website has all kinds of brochures, letters, templates. There are videos. I'll tell you, one day I went in and opened up the website and I was shocked, because it had gone from a generic website to having all of these brochures customized with pictures from Mulholland, with our logo everywhere, with videos of our kids doing things. All of this Karl's group had pulled from our website. So, I mean, they do a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes that is just phenomenal. Plus, anytime I had a question in terms of how do I say this, or how do I ask this question, or how do I present this, it was either there for me on the website in an example of, this is the letter you write to your congregation, this is the letter you write to your church leaders, this is the letter you write to your committee. There were the resources are there for you. But even more importantly than the resources that are available to you through the website is the access that you have to Kelly and Chris and Karl. I will tell you that I mean, I have been a pest for the last 3 years. And I have asked the stupidest questions, and I have asked them over and over again because I didn't understand the answer the first time. And they have been unbelievably patient and supportive and positive. They are the most incredible cheerleaders you can ever ask for. So I would say, if you have any hesitations or any concerns, you just have to start, and then it happens. You just have to start, and you have to ask for help, and you have to know that there are tremendous resources out there to support you.
Thank you, Ellaine. I appreciate your insight and your guidance. We're a little over on time. I want to be mindful of time, but if y'all are willing to stay for a little bit longer, Karl probably have a few more comments to make. And we do want to get to questions that you can either put in the chat, or we can answer them as we go along, and as we open up. A couple of things I want to kind of echo what and follow up on what Ellaine said. So we started off in this program about 3 or 4 years ago. We're going to send you, everybody who's on the call today, a copy of our agreement. And so the way the foundation partnered with Karl and his team in our churches, we thought it would be best for our churches to be involved and have a little skin in the game. So what we have set up for the program is if you try Planned Giving Navigator for 1 year, and at the end of that year it's not working for you, we'll refund your money. Cost is approximately $200 to $250, depending on the size of your church. It's a one-time fee, so you pay it 1 year and you stay with the program. It's not a succeeding fee every year. It's a one-time setup fee. That fee helps us with some of the costs of what we put together, and we help. But also, it helps. Frankly, it helps our churches stay involved. What you're getting for the cost is, frankly, you're getting a coach. You're getting Karl, who is going to, and his team are going to walk alongside you. We're going to have quarterly webinars, which we were doing up until the pandemic hit and kind of put us on pause. And as Ellaine said, you're going to, when you have access to the program, you're going to have access to website design, brochures that will be custom to your church, and a lot of other services and guidance that Karl will provide. We'll be sending the agreement and the sheet as well as the link to the webinar when we wrap up. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to questions. Or Karl, is there anything you want to add at this point while we're waiting on folks to raise their hands?
Boy, there's so much I could add. I think what I want to underline, though, is like how exciting it is to watch a program really move forward and someone kind of like just keep on keeping on and pedaling, even when it's a little bit hard. And you can't see it now, and you might not ever really feel like the benefits that you're giving to future generations, but you can witness what it's meant to us. I think really take a lot of encouragement that this will make that much difference to whoever comes after us. And it takes a long-term vision. And I really just want to thank Ellaine for leading your team through this effort. I mean, it's been just inspirational watching it, and just listening to, I guess, how you did it, and your process has been a gift to me. I don't always get to hear these great stories. So,
well, I'll say this: it has been challenging, but it has certainly been a lot of fun. But just about any time when I got to the point where I'm like, I am stumped. I'm losing energy here. I'd either get a call from Chris or Karl, or I would make a call to Chris or Karl. I mean, it was like, somebody knew that we needed to connect, and all of a sudden they'd come in and we'd have an hour-long conference, and I'd come away with a whole page full of next steps. And I mean, their commitment to supporting me has been phenomenal, and I know that they will do the same for you. I would imagine that probably one of the questions people are having is my church big enough? Is it worth doing something like this for a church my size? Or do I actually have enough resources in my church to make this work? And all I can say to you is it's not the size of the church, it's not the size of the gift that is important. The important thing here is that people make those first steps and make those first gifts and understand what legacy is all about. Some of the most valuable legacy gifts that we have heard of is, some couple or some individual late in their life who recognizes that they have a home and they don't have anybody to give that home to. And so they donate their home to the church, and that home may be worth $150,000, but that $150,000 then can support their wish to see missions encouraged in their church, and it can support those mission developments for generations, forever, and just knowing that person who really didn't have a lot to start with has an impact that lasts into, into perpetuity. So those are the stories that are just so encouraging to me. It's not the amount, it's the concern and care that goes into that gift.
That's a great point, Ellaine. One thing I would say to everybody on the call too, Elaine's team, I think Ellaine, you'd echo this, that they're not finished. And they've had bumps along the way. Elaine's a very thorough person, very detailed person who's really started on this journey to get this set up at Mulholland several years ago. But the raising of the awareness is the key, and I think through Elaine's work and the work of some of our other churches, we have some resources that we could share with you. For example, we can share with you an example of a gift acceptance policy, and an endowment agreement. We have those resources here at the foundation that we can help. So back to the point that Ellaine made about kind of helping, help with the learning curve and the process. We can absolutely help you in partnership with Karl on that end.
And I'm happy to share our policies and procedures. I mean, they're ours, they're customized to us and our needs, but it possibly would get you to the point where you would have something to think about, and is this something that, would work for you, or how do we change it so it would work? But, I think having those policies and talking about them and understanding what they say is just critical to gelling your effort and knowing what your mission is and what your goals are. And I think the thing that has come out of this that is probably the most important to me is that in the past, people have made gifts to our church, and they become designated gifts. And 10 years later, nobody really remembers what that designation was or why that gift was given. And so that money kind of gets consumed in the budget and it just goes away. And we see our role as protecting the wishes of the donor, primarily to protect the wishes of the donor and to grow the gifts that are given to the church. So our job, as we see it, is to, first of all, make sure that we know what the donor wanted to have for their gifts. And that's one of the challenges that we faced this past year, is we do have some significant gifts at the church, but we don't know what the donor wanted us to do with them. So we've had to make some assumptions in terms of those gifts. And, some of them, one of them particularly, we've turned into an endowed account because it was large enough to do that with. A couple of the others, we're not sure yet. We're trying to research through family members and understand if we can intuit what the donor's wishes were. But there is something called your letter of intent that we're going to make sure that everybody fills out when they make a gift or when they're planning a gift, so that we will know exactly what they want to happen with that gift. And that's something our church did not have in the past. So that's a very, very valuable piece of paper. That's
a great point, Ellaine. So Ellaine is available. Like she said, she's been so gracious with her time and also to share the story of the steps along the way and the hurdles and the considerations of the committee. So Ellaine, we appreciate all that you've done. I would say too that a couple of things, just to kind of go back to what Karl said. I want to echo a couple of things. First of all, think about that 2.74 times legacy giving from that IRS white paper. In terms of a legacy gift being 2.74 times annual giving, and what that can do to impact your churches. And I think the other statistic, Karl, that you threw out that was really eye-opening is legacy giving across all nonprofits, funding on average, from an estimate standpoint, 12 to 13, 14% of an annual budget of the organization. So I would put it to y'all and say, what could your church do with another 12, 13, 14% coming in from raising awareness of the critical need for planned giving? I think we know that answer, and I think that goes back to the question that Ellaine posed of, is your church big enough to have a planned giving program? And I think all of our churches are big enough to have a planned giving program and need to have an established Planned Giving program. Karl?
Yes, all of that. No, you know what you said. I'm just excited about it. I'll wrap up by also saying, like for the smaller churches, the job is actually a little bit easier. Like many of the smaller churches we work with use a little bit more straight line, like the Planned Giving sites that we use. We customize it to be, the churches and the brochures. There's fewer people to talk to and more direct lines of communication. So it's not as much third-party communications as a larger church. And so for smaller churches, it can be easier than it is for a larger church. Not easy, but I just don't want that to feel daunting if you're having that as the resources. Again, thank you for letting me be here, but thanks, Ellaine. This was amazing.
No, thank you. This is good. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellaine. Also, I just want to mention that this webinar was recorded, and I will send that out. We're going to have to, get the recording, and it takes a little while, but we will be sending that out early next week. And with that, I'll send the church agreement that outlines what the next steps are if you're interested in subscribing to Navigator. And then there's a job description that just some guidelines that might help you find the right contact person, your Ellaine in your church. Sometimes it's the pastor. So, just depends on who's got the gifts and graces and want to do it. But so just look for that early next week.
Yeah, we strongly encourage that we find that you identify somebody in your church who will take this on as a passion and as a ministry, right? Quite frankly, for your church, and we can help you identify those folks and walk alongside you. So we're going to wrap up. We've run over a little bit in time, but I hope this conversation has been beneficial for you and for your church. A couple points. We're here for you in any way we can. Bob Carroll's on the line today for our folks in North Louisiana. I'm your point of contact if you're in South Louisiana, and we'll have some webinars coming up in October and November. I just want to run through a few of those. On October 20th, we're going to have a webinar on narrative budgeting that we think will be really impactful for our churches and clergy and lay leaders. On October 27th, we'll have a webinar on grant writing for churches. And then coming in November, we're going to have a webinar on estate planning roadmap that we think will be very beneficial as we have a conversation with a Methodist who has written a book on planning for your contingency planning and kind of all encompassing of everything that you need to take care of your business, yours, your family, and others. So that'll be that promises to be a thought-provoking conversation for all. Thank you for being with us today, and we appreciate your support of the foundation. And as Kelly said, we'll be in touch with more information coming.